If you have ever felt kept close but not chosen, I want you to hear the truth without sugarcoating it and without making it dramatic. This dynamic is not confusing because you are irrational. It is confusing because it is structured to be confusing. It gives you proximity without commitment, warmth without stability, contact without accountability. And that combination trains your nervous system to stay engaged, because your system keeps trying to solve the question that never gets answered cleanly. Am I in or out? Are we real or not? Do they want me, or do they just want access? In this episode, I'm going to show you why this pattern happens so often in avoidant and anxious pairings, why it feels intimate even when you are not chosen, how your brain gets trained into auditioning, and exactly what changes the structure without begging, without chasing, and without turning yourself cold. Let's start with the main misunderstanding. Most people think being kept close means you are wanted. Sometimes you are, but being kept close is not the same as being chosen. Being chosen is not a vibe. It is not intensity. It is not chemistry. It is not late-night emotional moments. And it is not the fact that they come back. Being chosen is a pattern. It is a consistent investment pattern that survives normal pressure, normal needs, and normal conflict. An option dynamic is a pattern too. It is a pattern of access that expands when you are easy and collapses when you require clarity. So the first move is to stop judging the connection by how it feels in the best moments and start judging it by what it produces over time in your body and in your life. Because the body is a better truth teller than the mind. If the more you invest, the less you can relax, you are not being healed by love. You are being trained by uncertainty. Now, why do people keep someone close but not choose them? There are a few different reasons, and you only need one of them to be true for the pattern to exist. The first reason is emotional regulation. For many avoidant-leaning people, connection is soothing up to a point, and then it becomes threatening. Connection helps them feel alive, anchored, admired, seen, less alone. But past a certain threshold, connection starts to feel like obligation, expectation, loss of control, and exposure. So they keep you in the zone that gives them the benefit without triggering the full cost. The second reason is identity protection. Choosing you means becoming a partner, becoming accountable, becoming someone whose behavior has weight. If their identity is built around independence, around not needing, around having options, around staying unpinned, then choosing you threatens the identity. Not because you are wrong, but because being chosen is a role, and roles activate fear in systems that associate roles with entrapment or failure. The third reason is conflict avoidance. Being chosen requires repair. It requires naming problems, holding tension, and making changes. Many people would rather keep the relationship in an ambiguous zone because ambiguity lets them reset instead of repair. Reset is sweetness, charm, a check-in, a warm night, and then moving on like nothing happened. Repair is ownership plus change. Repair requires maturity. Reset requires only mood. So, if someone is capable of resets but avoids repair, you can be kept close for a long time because the system keeps restarting without ever upgrading. The fourth reason is the most uncomfortable, and it is common. Utility. Some people keep you close because you provide emotional labor, validation, stability, attention, comfort, or a sense of being wanted without requiring them to evolve. They may not be malicious, but the effect is the same. You become the relationship. You initiate. You soothe. You clarify. You translate. You carry. They receive the benefits of partnership without stepping into partnership. And if you accept that setup, the system will continue because the system works for them. Now, this is where anxious attachment usually gets trapped. The anxious system is not weak. It is sensitive to uncertainty, and it tries to stabilize uncertainty through proximity. It tries to reduce threat by creating contact. So when the avoidant system offers closeness in flashes, the anxious system reads that as movement and hope. It says, the door is open. If I just do this right, it will stabilize. And here is the trap. In this dynamic, your effort becomes the bridge. Your effort becomes the structure. Your effort becomes the reason the bond continues at all. That feels like love because you are investing. But the nervous system cannot relax in a bond that requires constant management. So you start scanning. You start monitoring tone, timing, warmth, micro-shifts. You start becoming strategic not because you are manipulative, but because you are trying to survive unpredictability. And over time, something changes in your identity. You stop being yourself and you become a performer. You become the version that keeps access. You become impressive, easy, calm, low maintenance, not too much. You edit your needs. You delay your truth. You soften your standards. You think you are being mature. But the cost is that your body stays on guard. And that's why this pattern is so exhausting. You are living in an audition. And being chosen does not require an audition. Being chosen requires mutual investment. Let's talk about the silent contract, because this is the engine of being kept close, but not chosen. The contract is rarely spoken out loud. It is felt. It sounds like this. If you want access to me, you must accept inconsistency as temporary. If you want closeness, you must not ask for clarity at the wrong moment. If you want commitment, you must not create pressure. If you want repair, you must wait until I'm ready. If you want reassurance, you must earn it. If you want the relationship to continue, you must be the flexible one. And many people sign this contract without realizing it, because the anxious system prioritizes connection over comfort. It will take unstable connection over no connection. And once you sign it, you start mistaking endurance for love. You say, I can handle this. I'm patient. I'm understanding. I'm strong. But endurance is not proof of love. Endurance is often proof that you are trying to regulate yourself inside an unsafe rhythm. Now, here is the part that gives you leverage. This pattern survives because of reinforcement. Whatever you reward will multiply. If you reward distance with attention, distance will continue. If you reward vague returns with deep access, returns will stay vague. If you reward silence with chasing, silence remains a strategy. This is not about punishing anyone. This is mechanics. Patterns repeat because they work. So the brutal question that ends the spell is not, why do they do this? It is, what am I making work for them? And then the second question is even more important. What am I making normal for me? Because every time you accept being an option, you train your nervous system that love equals uncertainty. Every time you audition, You train your identity that your needs are negotiable. And over time, that becomes your baseline. That is why people can leave this dynamic and still feel anxious in the next one. The nervous system learned a rule. I must perform to be chosen. I must scan to stay safe. So the real work is not only changing who you date, it is changing the contract you will live under. Now, let's make this very specific. How do you know you are being kept close but not chosen? The clearest sign is that your needs become negotiations instead of information. In a real bond, your needs create intimacy. They create teamwork. They create adjustment. In an option dynamic, your needs create distance. When you ask for predictability, you are labeled as too much. When you ask for clarity, you are labeled as pressure. When you ask for repair, you are told you are overthinking. When you express hurt, they reset with sweetness instead of repair. And this is the distinction you have to learn fast. Sweetness is not repair. Sweetness is a reset. Repair is ownership plus change. Reset is charm plus forgetfulness. Option dynamics are built on resets because resets restore access without requiring growth. Another sign is the rhythm. The relationship expands in moments and collapses in patterns. You get a strong night and then a weak week. You get intimacy and then distance. You get future talk and then avoidance. You get warmth and then vagueness. And you keep telling yourself it is a phase. But patterns are not phases. Patterns are capacity. If a person can only offer closeness in bursts and cannot sustain a consistent rhythm, you are not being chosen. You are being accessed. Now, I want to address something that makes option dynamics feel hypnotic. The identity hit. When someone keeps you as an option, your brain starts believing you need to prove you are choosable. So you perform. You try to be irresistible. You try to be impressive. You try to be easy. You try to be calm. You try to be perfect. And that performance becomes your new baseline. This is why you feel exhausted and not like yourself. Because you are not living. You are managing perception. And the worst part is that performance rarely produces real choosing. Performance produces access. Because when you perform, you make the system comfortable for them. You make it easy to keep you close without upgrading the contract. So the goal is not to perform better. The goal is to change what closeness requires. Now, let's talk about the fear that stops people from doing that. The anxious fear. If I require structure, I will lose them. And that fear is real. But here is the clean truth. If you lose someone because you required predictability and repair, you did not lose a stable bond. You lost a dynamic that required you to stay activated to keep it alive. That's why this is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming steady. Steadiness is the one thing this dynamic cannot survive unless it evolves. Either the relationship evolves or the illusion breaks. Both outcomes protect you. Now, what does steady actually look like? It is not a vibe, it is behavior. It is rules. It is structure. Structure is not coldness. Structure is safety. Structure is the environment where an avoidant can choose you with less fear because they are choosing into a stable system, not into chaos. And structure is also the environment where an anxious system can stop scanning because it finally has rules it can trust. So we need to define structure clearly. Structure means aligning access with behavior. Consistency earns access. Repair earns access. Clear communication earns access. Follow-through earns access. And what does not earn access? Vague returns do not earn full access. Silence does not earn full access. Mixed signals do not earn intimacy. Plans that never land do not earn emotional investment. That is structure. Now, this is where anxious attachment usually panics, because it hears "stop rewarding" and interprets it as "withdraw love." That is not the move. You are not withholding love. You are telling the truth with your behavior. Your attention is valuable. Your intimacy is valuable. Your availability is valuable. If you give it away, regardless of how someone shows up, you teach them that your needs are optional. Then you wonder why your needs keep being postponed. Alignment is not cruelty. Alignment is honesty. Now, let's make this practical with the moment that destroys most people. The urge moment. The moment they pull back or go vague and you feel the spike. Your body gets hot. Your mind starts prosecuting or begging. You want to text. You want to clarify. You want to fix. You want to say the perfect thing. This is where you need one rule that saves you. Delay action when activated. Delay does not mean ignore. Delay means regulate first, then decide. And the decision is based on one question. What behavior am I rewarding if I send this? If sending this rewards withdrawal with attention, do not send it. If sending this sets a clean standard without trying to control the outcome, you can send one short line and then stop. One message maximum. No follow-ups, no long paragraphs. Because the moment you chase, you teach your nervous system that anxiety is a command, and you teach the other person that distance buys attention. That is the entire difference between power and panic. Now, here is where people make a mistake. They think the goal is to get chosen by this person. Sometimes that happens, but that is not the first goal. The first goal is to stop living inside an option contract, because the option contract changes you. It makes you smaller. It makes you anxious. It makes you perform. It makes you scan. It makes you second-guess your reality. So the first goal is dignity and nervous system stability. And paradoxically, that is the only environment where a healthy return could happen. Because an avoidant system can only choose you with less fear when the system is stable. They cannot choose you when they feel chased, managed, or flooded, and you cannot relax when you feel vague access and no repair. So you build the one thing both systems need: a stable contract. Now, I want to address the question people ask once they start holding structure. What if they leave? What if they choose someone else? What if I was never enough? This is where we need a clean truth. Being chosen is not a feeling. It is a pattern. If you want to know if you are only an option, stop listening to intensity and start watching structure. Watch what happens after closeness. Watch what happens when you express a need. Watch what happens after conflict. Watch whether repair exists. Watch whether behavior becomes more consistent over time. Healthy bonds reduce nervous system activation over time. Option dynamics increase it. That's the diagnostic your body has been trying to tell you. If the more you invest, the less you can relax, you are not being held. You are being trained. And if the relationship cannot survive your steadiness, then it was never stable enough to hold you. Now, For the part of you that still loves them and wants the best-case scenario, hear this carefully. Steadiness is not an ultimatum. It is an environment. It is you saying, I will be warm, I will be open, I will be real, and I will also require predictability and repair. If you can meet that, we can build. If you cannot, I will not bleed. That is not punishment. That is self-respect. And self-respect changes everything because it stops the audition. When you stop auditioning, you start seeing reality. You stop interpreting crumbs as proof. You stop converting small signals into hope. You stop chasing clarity from people who prefer vagueness. You stop paying for access with your nervous system. And slowly, something returns to you. Your attention, your appetite, your sleep, your ability to be in your own life. That is the real win. Not that you never care again, but that you are no longer controlled by the need to be chosen by someone who will not choose you cleanly. Welcome to Psych Bond. You're safe here.